I'm going to run through a short presentation, which is focusing on just briefly explaining what the biohacker movement is about, and then some more material on chip implants, which is the topic of tonight. And then, then we can roll questions and have a conversation. So, okay, allow me to shoot some slides up here. Here we are. Does that look good? Okay, so briefly, if you want to harass me on Twitter, that's where I am. I'm HSJOB. So here we go. Biohacking, the biohacker movement is very diverse. It is driven by the democratization of technology. It's driven by the fact that what used to be expensive has now become cheap. Just like smartphones, that, I mean, a device like this 10 or 20 years ago would have cost 100 times what it costs today. And we're seeing all across the spectrum of technologies, the democratization of access to very powerful technologies. And here is an illustration of the different dimensions of this very diverse movement, which we can call the biohacker movement. It involves people who work with lab technology. We can call it do-it-yourself biology. There exists more than 100 sort of community labs all over the world. You can find a great list of them at diybio.org, and you can check if there's a local lab in whatever location you live. I know there are a couple of good ones in New York, for example, and you can go there, and we have built a biohacker lab in Stockholm where you can come on a Saturday and you can learn how to, for example, genetically modify bacteria. We also have the quantified self movement, which is people who use sensors and devices to measure their own behavior, what they consume and what they do. And many of you have probably tried fitness trackers at some point, but quantified selfers take it one step further and also experiment with the data that you can harvest from these kind of measuring devices. We have another community, which is the body modification community. It has deep traditional roots. We can see from the very, from the very oldest days of our species, when we look at, for example, mummies from ancient Egypt, that a lot of them have tattoos. We know of skulls from South America, from pre-Columbian civilizations that have applied pressure on the skulls to make them longer. And there was this Ötzi, the Iceman, that was found frozen, a Stone Age Paleolithic hunter that was found frozen into a glacier in Austria. And he had also a range of tattoos on his body. So modifying our bodies with technology is nothing new. In fact, we humans have been doing this as far back as we can look into the history of our own civilization. And then there is also a lot of biohackers who work with nutrition, health, fitness, inspired by professional athletics to a large extent, and how working to optimize perhaps not just physical performance, but also, you know, staying focused in the workplace for a full day. What should you eat? You know, should you drink coffee, or and how you can actually make yourself more productive. And that is another dimension of biohacking. Then there is a particular ethic or ethos in the biohacking movement, and it's not just the stuff we do, but also how we do it. And here is an example. It's a power drill, and if any of you guys have worked with in a lab at some point, maybe you know that you take your test tubes. If you take like a blood sample, and then you have to centrifuge it to separate different parts of the sample. But these centrifuge in labs are quite expensive. But what you can do is you can download a template and 3D print this yellow thing that you can put on a power drill, and you can use a power drill as a centrifuge for test tubes, and it costs only a couple of dollars. And this, for me, is an example of how you can take and you can again democratize and hack your own stuff, and you can create a biolab in your own garage with very little investment. here are a couple of illustrations from stuff we've done in the Stockholm biohacker community. Here on one side you see a glowing bacteria that we modified in a plastic test tube. On top we had a workshop last year where we did the wearable smart tattoos. So we put LED lights and conductive ink on ourselves and batteries and copper tape, and we turned ourselves into Christmas trees. Super beautiful, a lot of fun. We also learned that if you take too many batteries, it actually burns. What we do, what I think unites the biohacker movement and the very diverse people that are attracted to the movement is that what we have in common. There are people from all ages and backgrounds and different education, etc. But what they all have in common is that they are curious about technology, and they see technology as a hobby and as an interest. And exploring technology is something that unites us. And the fact that we are not afraid of technology. Coming back to some of the feedback that you had when marketing this event, that unfortunately there are lots of people out there who are afraid of technology. Again, this is nothing new. This has also been the case throughout human history. We can read in newspapers from the 1800s that when trains were launched, people were afraid that if you rode a train, you would go blind or your brain would shake loose in your head. When the first horseless carts started to move around on the streets, we now call them cars. People were so scared about these things that they made a special laws called the Red Flag Acts. They were issued both in Great Britain and in the US. And the law stated that if you have a car if you have a cart that is not pulled by a horse, there needs to be a man walking in front of it with the red flag. But of course, then we learned how cars work, and now we don't need to have someone walking with the red flag in front of every car. And the same story applies, of course, to new technologies that we launched today. So on chip implants is just the latest illustration of that mindset, that people, when you don't understand what a new technology does and what it's about, you are skeptical. I mean, it's a very natural thing to do, and maybe you even fear it. And what I want to do, and why I'm very happy to be invited here today, is I just want to share my understanding of how I can use these implants and explain how they work. And once you understand it, I don't think you worry so much about it, really. Briefly, we're all aware of this trend. Big devices are becoming smaller, at the same time cheaper and more powerful. Here is an illustration of music players from different generations. 1950s, big as a piece of furniture. 1980s, it became portable. Now the latest generation of music players, they are so small, you can just stick them in your ear. For example, this device that I have here is a Bragi Dash. It holds 4 gigabytes of music, and you don't need a phone. This is the complete music player. Also, digitalization is what is driving all these biohacker technologies. There is a great video, I'm sure you've seen it, which is the evolution of the desk. Check it up on YouTube. That really illustrates beautifully how we are making more and more stuff digital. However, coming to the very topic of tonight is that there are still a few things that are not digital yet. We've come some steps ahead in terms of making cash digital and dematerialize them. However, most of us still carry around a lot of junk in our pockets at all times or in our handbags. And a lot of the stuff that we carry around with us is in fact identification tokens for devices of different kinds. For example, as you can see in this image, it can be keys, key badges, or it can be access cards, membership cards in a library, at the gym, at the various shopping clubs where you get discounts, club cards, gift cards, public transportation devices. I mean, there is a whole range of devices, and ultimately what they all do is that they give me access to a certain building or a service, or they count some points that makes me a member of something. And what we realized in the Swedish biohacking community is that, you know, we should simplify this. Here is a task where we can make people's lives easier. We can declutter people's lives. And that is sort of why we started exploring this stuff. And I mean, since you already know the answer, what we did was that we found these chip implants that was issued by this wonderful American biohacker company called Dangerous Things. They did an Indiegogo campaign for a new type of implants in 2014 that was NFC enabled. And NFC, if you are not into the technical dimensions, NFC means near field communication. It is a very common protocol used for any kind of touch identification. It's exactly what you have, for example, in key badges or magnetic, touch cards. And NFC is not the same thing as RFID. RFID is an earlier and less versatile technology, and you could, in some way, you can say that NFC is like an umbrella for a bunch of different technologies. RFID is just one of them that sits under the NFC umbrella. But NFC is smarter, and you can use it to communicate in multiple ways, and you can encrypt communication, etc. So this image right here is of my hand, and it illustrates with the little chip that sits in my hand here between the thumb and forefinger of my left hand. It illustrates what I have been able to dematerialize, and that I don't have to carry with me anymore. Stuff that I used to carry. And starting from the top, it's, for example, membership in different shopping clubs around Sweden and Europe, where I get discounts and bonus points in different shops. It has keys and for padlocks and for cupboards. It is my business cards that I now have on my hand. So anyone with a smartphone can swipe my hand, and you get the data taken from my hand into your phone. For example, my V-card file. I can also store data on the chip, like you do on a USB drive if you want to store a file. Not as much as currently, you can't store as much data as you can on a USB, but you can store some data. The orange card right there, it's a gym card. So nowadays, when I go to the gym, I just swipe my hand at the entrance, and I can go in. The post-it note with the PIN code following is illustrates that I no longer have to use the PIN code to unlock my phone many times a day. In fact, I just tap my implant, and that is the trigger to unlock the phone. And there is also the badge for the office where I work, Epicenter, this innovation hub in Stockholm. And I should perhaps say that this Three Square company in the States, the fact that they got on the news was because we contacted them from Epicenter and said that we wanted to upgrade our vending machines so that we could use implants. And that is how we got them onto that train. So that was something that came from, in fact, the activities that we do at Epicenter. And now we have wonderful equipment from them so that we can use our implants to buy candy and soda and stuff in the vending machines at Epicenter. All right, moving on. So what exactly is an implant, technically? First of all, the implants that we use, they are small. It's a glass capsule. It's a chip that sits inside a capsule of ceramic glass, and it's about the size of a grain of rice. It's 2 by 12 millimeters, and it's passive, so it doesn't have a battery. It means that it's asleep at all times, except for when it comes within 1 centimeter of a door reader or a smartphone with a specific magnetic frequency. So, and also this implant technology is not new. In fact, we put implants in animals industrially for more than 20 years. So all horses and pigs and sheep and lots of cats and dogs, they all have these implants. And in many places, it's mandated by law. And the way the cat uses the chip that you stick in the skin of the neck is that it's to personalize the cat flap, right? So not any stray cat should be able to access the cat flap. It's just the cat that lives in the house, and this they operate exactly with this technology. And so for us who have put this stuff in our bodies, we are very safe in the insight that this technology has been solidly tested on billions and billions of animals. And we know for a fact that from a sort of physiological, from a medicinal point of view, it's absolutely harmless to the body. If it was, I would of course never have put it in my own body. So this little capsule, it sits in biocompatible ceramic glass that the body simply ignores. And it has a very long lifetime. You can have it for 10 or 20 years. And we know this from the implanting of animals. Moving on, I just want to illustrate a few user cases for the implants that you can use on a daily basis. Here I'm opening a door at the office, for example, so I don't have to, when I come in the morning, I don't have to dig in my pockets or in my bag to get the key badge out. I just swipe my hand at the door. And we also have the conference rooms and the copy machines and a lot of other functions in the office that are all accessed by just swiping the chip at the reader. Beyond that office space, you can, principally, you can take and set up NFC readers in any powered device that you have. So it's very easy. I have a good friend who set up a NFC reader in his car. So he just starts his car by swiping his hand. Or I have another friend who opens his car door by swiping his hand at the door. And if you know your way around technology, you can really stick this access into anything. Beyond that, there is, I think, a beautiful illustration. We modified a soft air gun and put a reader in the handle connected to the safety mechanism. And I mean, we've all read these terrible stories of, for example, a child finding a handgun in a home or in a car and harming family members. And to me, this is a wonderful solution to that problem, because with a chip implant connected to the safety catch of a gun, meaning that only the owner of the gun can actually unlock it, and you unlock it just by holding it. This makes the weapon personalized, and it completely eliminates the risk that someone else will be able to fire that gun. If it's a kid or a burglar or anyone who sort of gets unauthorized access to that weapon. So I think used in this setting, this is a technology that can really save lives. We've also been in the news in BBC because we, at Epicenter, we ran an innovation lab with the Swedish National Railways Association, the Amtrak of Sweden. And we ended up, a bunch of the guys working at the train company got implants. They looked into it and they realized, hey, we can replace the national train tickets with implants. And so they did. And it took only 6 weeks to implement. And then they launched it. And I had the honor to be on the premiere trip, the very first train ride in the world, we think, where we just used our implants for tickets. And the way it works is that the conductor on the train, when they go to check the tickets, they all have smartphones. And they, if you have a paper ticket or maybe you have just a ticket on your phone, then they use the QR code on the ticket and they photo it with the camera. But what they do for those of us with implants, they just swipe the hand and my ticket ID comes up on the screen. We discussed with the railway company, what should we call this type of new tickets? And I felt that chip implant tickets was kind of a too boring a name. So we proposed that why don't we call them high five tickets, where you would ultimately just hold up your hand and you would high five the conductor and they would get your ticket while doing it. Wouldn't that be a wonderful sort of friendly user experience with the train staff? So wrapping this up a little bit, why is chip implants suddenly becoming interesting right now, this year? After all, if we've had them around for for decades already, why does it make sense to suddenly start sticking them into our hands? Well, the answer is, of course, that what we're seeing right now is this explosion in the Internet of Things, in the world of connected devices. And the Internet of Things currently encompasses about 10 billion connected devices, but we expect that by 2020 there will be 50 billion, and by 2025 upwards of 500 billion connected devices. And all these devices that speak to each other using different protocols, we need often a way to easily identify us when we interact with the Internet of Things. And I think chip implants is a wonderful solution, and I will explain that to you, why I think that this is ultimately our personal access key to our own user universes in this connected world. If we take a look back in tech history, there is a term that I really like to apply, and that is interface moments. And an interface moment is when there is an innovation in a certain technology that makes it, a lot easier to use, that makes it accessible to a lot more people than it used to be. We can take, for example, computers. Someone watching this may recall what computers were like before we had Windows. It was terribly complicated, and you needed to be an experienced engineer, and you needed to know lots of very specific and incomprehensible commands, and to type them to instruct the computer to do certain things. But at some point someone said, hey, why can't we design a computer that is a desktop, and there would be a trash bag and you would put stuff in the trash? And when they did that, suddenly personal computing became available to millions of more people. And all kinds of different businesses and innovation came out of that new interface. And the same goes for web browsers. You may recall, if you were around at that time, that there was in fact an internet before we had browsers, and it was terrible. Not only was it slow, but you also needed to know the phone number to every website you wanted to visit. And once you had called that specific website and you started downloading stuff, you would just get a humongous index of folders, and you would have to click, and you would have to know exactly where to find which particular file or picture or whatever you were looking for. But with the invention of the browser, we had suddenly this interface to the internet that made the internet accessible, indexable, understandable, and made it easy to use. And what happened with the browser? The browser became in itself a platform for thousands, for millions of new companies that would not have been able to exist before browsers. And it created a tremendous growth in innovation and in usage. And I don't think I have to elaborate on my third example here, which is the third touch interface smartphone and the whole app economy that has come out of that new interface for mobile computing. So the point I want to make here is, I'm sure you've already guessed it, is that in this world of billions and billions of connected devices in our homes, in our workplaces, in schools, and in public buildings, we will have to identify ourselves with when we open doors, we open lockers, when we get points for something. And we don't want to carry thousands of cards in our pockets to identify us in all these instances. And we don't want to type PIN codes on all these devices. We don't want to hold our eye or our fingerprint towards them. We just want them to work when we touch them. And in this setting, NFC implants is a perfect key, because it just sits there and it's triggered when you touch a device, and you can identify and you can personalize the tech experience, or you can unlock your access just by touching and holding and working with stuff. I should mention that since we started implanting ourselves, a dozen people in 2014 in Stockholm, just for fun, we had no idea that this would create an enormous interest. And since that time, I've been invited to, 4 continents and 20 plus countries to host implant parties, implanting events. Here are just a few pictures, but we've held, I've lost count on how many implant party events we've held. An implant party is a super simple thing to do. You just bring together a bunch of friends, and we bring in a professional piercer that brings in the chip implants, and then we all get implanted. And the way we wanted to do this from the beginning was that being a hacker and a person who loves to experiment with technology, I see such great value in doing something together. Because let's say you are a bunch of 10 smart people who all get implanted, then you can learn from each other, you can compare use cases, and you can exchange ideas on how to use this new technology. So this is something we have applied in a lot of other settings as well, not just with chip implants. And there are several Facebook groups with hundreds, and in a couple of them there are thousands of people with implants who are all discussing, okay, when's the next launch? Oh, have you tried this app? Look, I found this particular lock. And they all exchange ideas about what we can do with these technologies. And I highly recommend that. There is, for example, a group called RFID Implantees that is an awesome meeting place for people with implants. Of course, some of you are thinking of the security dimension. There are three main security aspects of these implants beyond simply the medical dimension of when you stick it into your body. There is, of course, a risk for invention, since you make a hole in the skin, which is why we always work with professional piercers when we do these things to make sure that it's made under sterile conditions made by professionals who understand the anatomy of the human body. But looking at the digital dimension, what are the different security challenges? Well, there are three main ones. First of all, there's tracking. Many people ask me, okay, so do people know where you are now because you have an implant? Can your wife see where you are? Can your boss see where you are? The very simple answer to that question is no, you can't, because the chip is passive. It doesn't have a battery. It cannot transmit a signal by itself. The chip only communicates this information when it is within a distance of 1 centimeter from a powerful reader. Then it wakes up and says, hello world, here's my information, and then it goes back to sleep. So if I get lost in any location, you can't find me because of this little chip. Second dimension is hacking. There is, yes, you can hack these implants, these first generation implants that we have, quite easily. I mean, someone can sneak up on someone who has a chip implant, and you can, by swiping your phone over that implant, you can install some other data on it. So in my eyes, it's simply something that people have to be aware of. So don't put your life secrets on your chip implant. Think of your chip implant and the stuff you put on there as stuff you'd be willing to share with the world. Like what you would be okay to put on your T-shirt and walk down the street. Okay, here's my Twitter handle, here's some poetry, here's my, contact me here, but perhaps not your secret PIN codes and passwords. At least not with these first generation implants that we have. Then for me, ultimately, I think the biggest security problem lies in the cloning of implants. And cloning means that you copy an implant and you take that exact ID number and you recreate it in another token. And so, for example, I have if someone takes my ID and then goes home and programs a card with that ID number, then they can access the office pretending to be me. And then again, this is not a new problem. People have been losing swipe cards and badges already ever since these technologies were invented. So the ways to deal with these things is, of course, that you can, for example, use multi-factor verification. You can have a chip plus a PIN code, which is the way we do it in the office. If you access it outside of certain hours, you also need to identify yourself with a PIN code. And this is all using existing infrastructure. We don't have to do anything new to implement such a solution. I should also mention that I'm not particularly fond of biometrics. I don't like to leave my fingerprint data anywhere, for example. I think there's a fundamental difference between digital technologies and these, using your own body for identification, because the weakness with fingerprints is that you cannot change them. If your fingerprints are in a database which becomes adrift or it's hacked, that data is lost forever. And if it's connected to you, the bad guys have your fingerprints. you can never get them back. If someone gets my chip ID, I can reprogram the chip, or I can automatically even take the chip out and stick another one in. But I'm not giving away an unchangeable part of myself. So biometrics has the advantages that they share with chip implants, that you always have them with you and that they are always available. But the weakness is that they are unalterable. And if they are lost, you cannot recover them. So keep that in mind, guys, if you use fingerprints for a lot of settings, that you take an unnecessary risk. So I want to round off with just saying that we've just started. There are so many cool things we can do with implants beyond just opening doors. Here are just a couple of ideas on a few projects that are working on these. There is, for example, next generation chips that are encrypted, and that you have much better control of the data and you can prevent other people from accessing it. We have a range of attempts of people using implants for public transportation, not just Swedish railways, but for example, metro and subway travel in Germany. There is an interesting project. And ultimately, I think the greatest benefits of this technology is to use them for health. So imagine a little implant that you can have that could monitor your biometric data and warn you if suddenly the heart arrhythmia is changing, or if you have a fever incoming, or if something else is noticed, the cholesterol level has gone up compared to your standard, and you will have an early warning system for the body. And I think when applied smart in the health tech space, there is enormous opportunities to save lives, especially in developing countries that may not have the developed healthcare systems of richer countries. So I think in that setting, this is a world transformative technology. I want to round off with saying to you guys that it's fun to play with new tech. That's a reason in itself to do it. It's just entertaining and it's exciting. But if you are also a practical-minded person, I'm sure you're asking yourself, or you want to ask me, why should I be doing this? Why should I put an implant in myself? And what I want to say in this setting is that this technology already exists. It's there. It's being used. And if you close your eyes, it won't go away. And the whole point of experimenting with new technology is that you learn how it works and you learn how to apply it, right? And maybe you can find some wonderful user cases that will make your life easier. But there is also the other reason, which is you must understand new technology in order to understand if it's being used against you. And as a hacker and as someone who is a privacy campaigner and advocate, I don't want chip implants to be something that the government suddenly introduces, pushes it on us, or suddenly is marketed by the big tech companies. Oh, now everyone is going to get the iChip. If that ever comes that day when there is a compulsory implanting, forced upon us by companies or by governments, I will be standing on the barricades fighting this tooth and nail, because I think that these technologies should be used by volunteers, by people who are informed and who want to do it by themselves, by choice. And but the way to do it is that we have to be informed. We have to understand this technology. And if it starts in the way that suddenly at a nursing home they call you and say, hey, we want to chip grandma because so we can give her access to certain doors, then I will be able to question that proposal from an informed point of view, because I understand implant technology. I say, okay, so you're going to chip grandma? Well, why are you using this protocol? Why are you using this setting? Why are you using this standard when there are this and this and this and these other standards that gives grandma much greater privacy? And the same can apply to prisons, which has been proposed for implants. We as citizens and as activists and as biohackers, we have to be informed. We have to know these technologies better than the governments and the corporates, so that we can be one step ahead and to make sure that they can't be used against us. Thank you very much, guys. That was my message for today.